we're going to look at a ProView game. Now, before we begin, what you can learn from a ProView game is essentially how numbers advantages work. Because what you will see is that both sides will show up the lane early, both on top and on bot side. So what that means is essentially the jungler could be starting here, it could be starting here. The jungler on SKT side could be starting here, it could be starting here. We don't know. However, we do have one piece of information, which is that we have a ward here. So immediately what this means is the Jarvan in this game could either start wolves, he could start red, and those are the options. And because they know that these are the options, SKT's bot lane are going to look to let the wave push into them, and they're going to look to scout any attempts for a lane gank that the Jarvan might do after clearing his red. So as you can see, they lay down a ward here, just to make sure that in case Jarvan comes over, they're going to be able to spot it happening. And this is because when playing bot lane in competitive, it's not just a 2v2. It can be a 2v3 if the jungler comes, or if the mid lane roams, or if the top laner uses TP behind you, somewhere over here, or whatever. Could be 2v3. It can also be a 2v4, which means that 2 extra people come, which could be the jungler and mid, or jungler and top, or the top and the mid. Or it's a 2v5. Obviously this though is very unlikely. This doesn't really happen at all, so we can forget this. So we're left with these scenarios. The worst case is obviously 2v4, which is that someone TPs in or someone roams in on top of the jungler, usually. The 2v3 is the most average case, which is when the jungler comes and ganks. That's usually what's going to happen. And 2v2 is when it's just a standard lane, where there are only the laners inside of their own lane, and jungler and mid and top are not involved inside of the fight. So these are the scenarios we have to work with here. And what Teddy has to figure out is he has to figure out if he goes in for a fight, is it going to be a 2v2, or is it going to be one of the other 2 cases? That's what the challenge is here. So they spot out the Jarvan. As we can see, we see Jarvan top side, and we also have Lee on the bottom side looking for camps, seeing what's up. And this will, of course, tell Lee Sin what kind of pathing did Jarvan take. Did he go red into wolves into blue? Did he go red blue into Gromp? Or what did he do? That's what Lee Sin is figuring out here by invading. And now Leona comes to ward, she comes back, and here we're going to see an engage, which obviously Uzi spots out that this would happen because he knows that SKT's bot lane knows that Jarvan cannot be on the bottom side, simply because there are no camps up, because Lee invaded. So he is aware that they know this, therefore he makes sure that on these minions he does not get traded. However, if we imagine now that Lee Sin did not invade and we did not know that he was on top side, then this probably would not have happened, because then Teddy and Effort would have probably assumed that if they went in, there is still a possibility that it could be a 2v3. And if it is, then they lose. So they're very, very cautious with what fights they pick. Things are even, and now they actually back off. Most likely because they believe that Jarvan can be on this side of the map. A ward gets placed down here in the bot lane, so we know that Jarvan is here. And even there, the bot lane makes sure that they do not go for any prolonged fights, because they want to remain healthy. Because Teddy knows that if he trades his HP for dealing more HP to this guy, then it's going to be worse for him. Because if Jarvan decides to actually go for a dive here, they're probably most likely gonna both die. So they are playing very, very cautiously here, knowing that there is a possibility that it can happen. Now, here is where we actually see Jarvan appearing on mid after he ganks Faker. Teddy, knowing this information, and Effort knowing the same thing, will now look to actually engage onto the Ezreal, knowing that now it is definitively a 2v2, because, let's think about it for a second. First of all, Kayle is not in a position where she can roam. She's not in a position where she can use TP. Same thing for top lane. He's not in a position to TP to this lane because there are no wards behind the bot lane. So if he tried to, for example, TP here to this bush, it would not be possible, because then Teddy could, after securing the kill onto Ezreal, could just back off under his turret, and then nothing would happen. So knowing that it is impossible by definition for RNG to punish him for going for this fight, they're both going to look to try to kill Uzi here. So we're going to see that in a few moments, actually. Uzi takes a turret shot extra, which means that he actually dies there, which was unlucky. Probably a slight positioning mistake that he made. Now, here's where we will see an interesting thing happening, because if we watch a few moments earlier, let's look at Jarvan's position here. He goes into the bottom side of his jungle. He goes into this side of the jungle. Knowing that he will go into the bottom side, most likely Lee Sin calls this out to bot lane. And what you're going to see is that Teddy doesn't actually go for another kill onto Ming. Instead, he is fine with only getting a kill onto Uzi. We're going to see that in a few moments. He positions like this. If he knew that Jarvan actually went to the top side, then there would be no reason for him not to actually walk and kite in this direction, following Galio's path, which would in fact secure the kill, and at that point there would be nothing that RNG can do here. However, because we know that Jarvan, after ganking Faker, went to the bottom side, we know that he is somewhere here in this piece of Fog of War. So this does not have to be simply a 1v1. It could actually be a 1v2 by the time that Jarvan comes over. Plus, we also know that Teddy does not have flash. So if Jarvan comes, it's most likely going to be very difficult for Teddy to actually escape from that. So at that point, he is fine with letting this kill go, because he knows that the numbers advantage is not there for him in his favor. And actually, we can actually fact check this. We can actually confirm that this is true, because there's also a perspective from Uzi's point of view. And I think we can actually see it here. Uzi Ezreal ProView. There we go. Okay. We can actually confirm this. I think it was around, well, what was the minute mark? Oh, it was 5 minutes actually. Oh, right. Let's go here. Now the engage happens, he gets hit by the third shot, and as we can see here, we can clearly see it right here, Jarvan comes over, and by the time that Galio escapes, Jarvan is on the bot side. So if Kai'Sa had actually decided to follow through with the kill, he probably would have been killed by the Jarvan because he didn't have flash. Again, this goes back to numbers advantages. Being aware of not only the champions that are visible, but also the champions that are invisible. The champions that we don't see on the map. Because, for example, a parallel that we can draw is that, if I open up Riftkit here, a parallel that we can draw is that, say that you are a top laner, and the top turret is down. If you know that there are 2 people missing, and among them are the jungler and the mid laner, we can probably assume that if we intend to fight the top laner, we'll also have to think about the potential case that both the jungler and the mid laner comes, or either one of the 2 come over to kill us. So at this point, what you have to do as the split pusher is you have to figure out to yourself, okay, can I fight a 1v2? Is it possible for me? And this depends on the 1v2, because perhaps fighting 1v2 versus the mid laner is less harmful than fighting a 1v2 versus the jungler plus the top laner. So there are different 1v2s. There's the top plus jungle, there's the top plus mid. And you have to figure out if you can kill both of them. If you can, then that will up your chances of actually continuing to split push. Now, the worst case would be 1v3, which means that both of them come over. And that would be top lane plus mid plus the jungle. And if you can't fight the worst case, then at that point you cannot split push. Because if you know that they are missing, and they probably will be on this side of the map, depending on different factors, like for example, if Baron is up or if Drake is up, whatever. Depending on different factors, you have to be prepared that this can happen, and if it does, then you will most likely lose, unless you have the necessary items and the necessary mechanics to execute a 1v3. And if you can execute it, then at that point continue by all means. By all means continue split pushing. But you can only continue split pushing after you analyze if you can fight these lane assignments, as they are called. Lane assignments being, for example, 1-3-1, or 0-4-1, or 4-0-1, etc. Basically, you put 4 people here, you put 1 person here, or you put 3 people here, 4 people here, 1 person here, or 3 or 4, whatever. Doesn't matter. Point is, a lane assignment is essentially the way that you assign different people to different lanes. So yeah. That's really why Teddy did not decide to go for that. Even though he very well could have secured a kill and probably gotten Ming, but he would have died for it. He farms. At this point, they know that if they fight, Jarvan is going to be here on this side of the map. They know that very, very clearly. They get the Drake because they have the better 3v3. Plus, they know that SKT can't really respond to them taking Cloud. Lane evens out. Nothing really happens at this point. They play back, knowing that, again, Jarvan can be on this side of the map. If they see Jarvan on this side of the map, if they see him on this ward, that will then most likely lead to Teddy then making a decision to actually put more pressure onto the Ezreal and the Galio. But if he doesn't see Jarvan on this ward, then that's the same thing as Jarvan being everywhere else besides this. He's basically inside of this fog of war. He can be anywhere. Within this fog of war, except for this ward right here, he can be anywhere. Anywhere in here. And if he's anywhere in here, that's the same thing as him being everywhere. So you have to assume that he can be top lane. That's why GP is letting Mordekaiser push into him. That's why he's not fighting for a push on the top. And that's because all of SKT's team members know that it can happen. Anything can happen if Jarvan is within the fog of war. If they see him very clearly on one side or the other, then the other side can actually play around that and actually put more pressure on the opponent. But only if they see him. And obviously, of course, there's also the variable of time. So if a certain time passes, then that can also warrant you to put more pressure onto your enemy. Nothing really happens. Both sides are aware of where the other team is. Jungler's doing a good job of giving hidden pressure to their team. This is good right here. As you can see, they get sandwiched. Not a very good position. They get sandwiched. So Teddy decides to reposition here with his team. Very simple. Not too much going on. Here we actually see one of RNG's first mistakes. We can actually look at it from... we can actually look at it from Uzi's perspective, because we'll see that in a few moments. Right around there, actually, yeah. So here you will see one of the first mistakes that RNG makes. We know that previously here, just a few moments ago, we know that the entire team was here. We know that Lee Sin is here, we know that Kai'Sa is here, we know that Leon is here. Basically everyone except for GP is on the top side. We know that. There is a possibility that they are still going to be there. However, we will see in a few seconds that Ming actually decides to face check the bush. And what ends up happening is that Ming dies. Because they did not account for the possibility that all four of them could still be here, which would put them at the 2v4 disadvantage. Again, this is how powerful numbers advantages are. If you don't play around them, they can and probably will happen. Jarvan then decides to look for an engage. Has to flash. And this is again, going back to what I said, this is also because of numbers advantages. Because look at the way that RNG's team is positioned. First of all, Jarvan is completely separated from the backline. So this is not actually a 3v4 or 3. It's neither of those. It's actually a 1v3 and 1v4. Because Jarvan is isolated. He's isolated from the rest of his team. So until Ezreal and Kill comes over, which by the time that they do, he's probably going to be dead unless he flashes, it's going to end up being a 2v4 or 2v3. Because these variables will not change. They will most likely not die from a solo Jarvan diving into the whole team at once. So that's why he flashes. has to back off, and then the game proceeds. Securing vision on the bottom side, SKT cannot contest RNG for Drake. And the other thing is that by constantly shoving lanes, what you're essentially doing is you're getting vision from the minions. You're getting vision from the minions, and you're also forcing rotations on the map. This is something that you can actually learn to do. Essentially, let's say that you are a Z, for the sake of the argument. Let's say that you are a Z. Assume this is a mid Z right here. What you can do is you can shove into top lane. Now, this can be anyone really. Doesn't have to be top lane. They will have to come over because the costs of not coming over is, first of all, you lose gold. Second of all, you lose XP. And third of all, you lose turret damage or turret HP. These are the things, the resources that you lose from not rotating to this lane after Zed shoves in. Zed, knowing that someone has to come over, someone has to stop this from happening, can then utilize this information and then position himself with Red Trinket. Using Red Trinket, he can then sweep through the jungle and then position here. And because one of the team members had to rotate here, and maybe something else is going on, maybe Drake is going on over here, maybe they're setting up, I don't know, an objective on this side of the map, then this, whoever this is going to have to rotate back to where they came from. So they're either they're going to rotate here, or they're going to recall and then rotate to the bottom side, or they're going to go through the jungle. And Zed can capitalize on this. Because he forced the rotation of one of the team members, he knows that that team member is going to have to rotate back. And then he can catch them off guard as they are rotating back to the lane that they came from, or from the position that they were in. And by doing this, Zed can then rack up kills by repeatedly shoving and then looking to wait in the fog of war for someone to come. And he can also probably place a control ward here, giving him vision on this path as well. So in case they don't go through this path, but they instead go through this path, he can then reposition and then just kill them right here. Very simple. So that's an example of forcing rotations from the enemy team. You force them to rotate to the lane that you've shoved in, thereby giving you an opportunity to either kill them when they rotate back, or you can even shove them in, force them to rotate, and as they are clearing the wave here, you then rotate to whatever you are setting up on this opposite side of the map. And that would be classified as a flank. So what RNG is looking to do with their advantage is they're looking to shove lanes in repeatedly to force rotations from SKT so that they cannot get a... So that they have to constantly play one step behind RNG's team in rotations. Because if RNG is able to shove first, they're also going to be able to rotate first. And if they can rotate first, they can also do objectives and setting up vision first. They can get priority on different objectives. And as you can see, Faker shoves in top, forces the rotation from Kayle. Lee Sin goes in top to place down vision, to de-ward. And Kai'Sa Leona shove in mid, forcing Ezreal and Galio to have to clear it before they can help the jungler. Another rotation being forced from SKT, forcing Uzi to actually come over to mid to clear the wave. And while he's clearing the wave, they're probably going to look to do something on the map, such as setting up vision, as they're doing right here. They shove another wave, look to get something on the map, look to get vision. And now, because they are recalled, Ezreal can now look to actually get the first shove onto the enemy. Meaning that now RNG can either recall, or they can get some vision, or they can do something on the map, such as farming. Again, forcing rotations, putting the enemy one step behind you so that you can be proactive and do something before them. Team fights happening. Now this is an interesting point of view because we can actually go look. This is the 1853, so let's have a look here. Right. Around here, yeah. And as you can see here, this is actually very planned out by Teddy. This flash was actually planned out way before the fight even began, because you have to think about it from Kai'Sa's perspective. She has two forms of counterplay. Well, technically three if you count for sidestepping, but it's two with the ability, the cooldowns that she has. So she has ult. She can use it to dive in, or she can use it to dodge an ability. An important spell from the enemy. He also has his flash. Oh no, sorry, not this one. Thought it was something else. He has flash, he has ult. He can use his flash to dodge an ability such as the EQ combo from Jarvan. He can look to use the flash to dodge Galio, knock up. He can use it to dodge multiple things. But most likely, he knows that the biggest threat is going to be Jarvan EQ. And because he knows that that's the main threat, he's going to save his flash to dodge it in some way. Whatever the context may be, he's going to look to dodge it with his flash. And that's going to be his counterplay. So he knows that when going into this fight, he has at least one more form of counterplay to prevent Jarvan from landing his EQ. Jarvan then decides to actually all in here, locking Kai'Sa down. The Sin actually peels for Kai'Sa, allowing Teddy to actually escape from that, and then they manage to secure the objective. They get what they came for. They won the fight. We see a lot of vision wars happening. As you can see there, that's the threat of numbers advantages. SKT's top laner did not think that they could be here. But, alas, like we said, if there is Fog of War, it probably means that they are everywhere at once within this Fog of War. But obviously, since Baron is the current main objective, we can assume that they're going to be towards this half of the map instead of this half. Because it doesn't really make any sense why they would be here. So they can be around this area. Anywhere within this area. Knowing this, if they had played around it, he probably would not have died. Effort gets caught out. They manage to clamp onto Effort. He couldn't do much about it. Knowing that they're not going to look to take an extended fight, Teddy uses his ult immediately, knowing that he wants to just pick off the Galio right away from the fight. Wants to get something as a trade for losing Baron. Because losing Baron for free and not trying to do anything about it, not trying to trade it for anything, is a worse option. Because if they get Baron for free, then that's obviously going to be a huge burden for SKT in this position. They lose mid inner, and here we will actually see another mistake coming from RNG's side. As you can see, Faker is looking to recall. He has split pushed and shoved into the top lane. He has not seen any sort of reaction from RNG's side, since they're still continuing to break open the mid inhib. So he actually decides to look to recall, but we're going to see in a few moments that he actually stops his recall. And this is because SKT knows that if GP just uses his ult, clears the wave, maybe not this. This is probably going to survive throughout the ult. But if they clear the wave, they're not going to be able to siege this turret. Knowing that that is true, Faker actually decides to stay here and continue to push. Because he leverages the fact that this team can actually defend the siege relatively well. Or actually, wait, hold on. Yeah, no, actually, no. He recalled here, but then he stopped. Right. It was a different instance. Okay, so he recalls back. And this was the mistake coming from RNG. Ming decided to actually go in. He assumed that going in, or I'm not entirely sure what he assumed, to be honest. Maybe he wanted to buy his team some time to run away. I think that could be a reason why. But yeah, he gets picked off. RNG can't really do anything about it, so they back off, and then they take the Drake. RNG sets up vision on the top side, delivering pressure, and getting the top inner. They reset, and now they look to get onto the map again to shove out the lanes. Faker shoves out top, forces a reaction from RNG. If Kale comes top, Mordekaiser goes bot lane, forces a reaction from Gangplank to have to split push against the Mordekaiser here. Ezreal shoves in mid, forcing a reaction from Kai'Sa to clear out the wave before going bot lane. Here we'll see some really good ADC positioning. As you can see right here, Kai'Sa maintains a very, very defensive position, or not even defensive, just a correct position, standing behind his front line at all times. Whenever the front line moves back, he moves back an equal distance. Whenever they move forward, he moves forward an equal distance. Making sure that he always keeps that perfect spacing. They reset. Shove mid, force a reaction from Ezreal to then look to play some vision. Basically doing a standoff here in mid. Not much happening. Just backing off. Not taking any risky fights. Ming gets caught out, has to flash. SKT has to back off. They are outnumbered and they are also low HP. There's not a lot that they can do here. However, we actually now see one other ADC specific thing, or just carry specific in general. Let's think about it for a second. We know that Mink's flash is down. He got caught out about a minute earlier, so his flash is completely down. There's no way that he can actually flash E. Second of all, in no way is Mordekaiser able to do anything to Kai'Sa. He used his ult moments ago, meaning that Kai'Sa in this position knows for a fact that there's nothing that they can do to him. In fact, he doesn't even need stopwatch or flash. He can just walk in on them and just run them down without attacks, forcing them to have to back off. And we're just going to see that in a few moments here. As you can see, moves in, uses ult, cleans them up, and the RNG has to now back off. And they secure Baron. So, yeah, I'm not going to look at the rest of the game. Essentially, to recap all of this, there are a few things we can learn from this. Number one, in a ProView game, you're most likely going to look to learn how numbers advantages work and how they play out in terms of trades and just in terms of how people move. So that's the first thing. Numbers advantages are a huge part of competitive play. They are really one of the essential elements to competitive macro. Second thing we can learn is that once you know for a fact that you have enough strength to be able to handle whatever the enemy can throw at you, keyword can, then at that point you actually go for the fight. And then at that point, the only thing that determines if you succeed or not is, first of all, how accurate is your analysis of the situation. Did you actually correctly analyze that you can actually win this lane assignment, or is there something that you were missing? And second of all, is your mechanics, are your mechanics good enough to actually execute this fight? And those are the only things that will limit you at that point. Like we looked at in this game, we could see that as soon as Teddy saw Jarvan being mid, he and Effort decided to go in for the engage on Ezreal, because they knew that they can win the 2v2 very easily. Kai'Sa Leon is almost always going to be stronger than Ezreal Galio. So those are like the two things. The third thing we can learn is that as an ADC, you want to create a game plan way before you get into a fight. What is it that you are dodging? What is it that you are building to avoid? And what form of counterplay do you have to actually avoid it? Those are the things that you're looking for. And then fourth thing is ADC positioning. You always want to maintain a position unless certain conditions apply, such as going in for a kill and then you can escape out with a counterplay. Like we saw with Kai'Sa diving in to Drake to kill Kayle and then flash out of the Jarvan EQ combo. That's an example of an exception. But the general rule is that you're going to look to have at least one person in front of you at all times whenever you're hitting someone. And something that's not ADC specific is that in order to get something on the map, whatever it may be, usually the format that I go after is GIVOFR. And what I mean by this is gank, invade, vision, objective, fight, and of course recall for R. So these are the 6 decisions that you can go for in a tactical manner. So before all of these decisions, what you have to do before any of these is you have to shove. Ideally, you would like to shove a wave. There are some exceptions where you can't, or you don't have the time, or it's not necessary to shove. But in general, this is what you're going to look to do. You're going to look to shove, then you go for a gank. You're going to shove, then you look for an invade. You're going to shove, then you look for vision, objectives, fights, or recalls. That's what you're going to do. And the way that the format goes for example, setting up a Baron, if you look into competitive play, is it's mostly going to be shove into vision, because you want to set up vision control around this objective. You want to get vision. Then after getting vision, now your time has run out. You've lost tempo. So now you have to go back to shoving again, so you can put the enemy one step behind you. So you have the proactive position where you can actually go for the objective. Now, in a real competitive game, it's not going to be this simple. A lot of things are going to happen. People are going to get picked off. People are going to fight over vision. Stuff like that. So usually what it's going to look like in general is it's going to be shove vision for like 20 times or so on average. Something like that. And then for the final time, it's shove, and then you go for the objective. Because now we assume that you have the superior vision. And if you have the superior vision, then that means that you now have control over the objective. Again, this goes back to numbers advantages. If you have vision control, the enemy can't see very clearly if it's going to be a 4v4. Is it going to be a 4v5? Are we going to be, if we are 3 people, is it going to be a 3v4? Is it going to be 3v5? Is it going to be a 3v1 even? Maybe there's just one person here. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. But the point is, we're very uncertain unless we actually see what the lane is, what the numbers advantage is. And that's really what you can learn from watching a ProView game. You learn how to play macro on a high level. You force rotations from the enemy by shoving. You learn how to think about numbers advantages, how to play around them, how to manipulate them, how to put the enemy into a position where they don't know if they are at a numbers disadvantage. Third, we also learn a bit about how ADC works and how you should play it. Essentially, how you set up a game plan for going into team fights, how you position, how you itemize as well. Stuff like that. Alright then, that's it.